Sweet.
Always talking before.
Every single time.
Every time.
Without
All
fail.
right.
Don't you worry, Mike.
Yep. I won't. I don't.
Do you cut it out? I don't ever listen to the other things again
The
after I do
Patreon,
it once.
the patrons get this fully uncut.
Yes. Just for you guys.
Yes. All right. Let's do this. Are you good now? All right.
Didn't you see I did the thing?
Welcome, all you Rugrats, to the podcast that is nothing but drama. My name is Mike, and to my right, my left, oh my goodness, is that way, is none other than Jelly, Joe
Somewhere
himself.
on that screen, you'll find me.
Yes. How you doing today, Jelly?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing super
good?
good.
That's good, man. Glad to hear it. And the winner himself, I'm calling him the winner because he put this movie up on our poll. I decided to go with his suggestion. We have Jacob. Jacob is known as Vectorax over on the Twitter and Twitch universe. Jacob, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. Hope y'all are doing well.
Dude, glad you could join us. Glad you're doing well. So we started doing a poll for our TV shows, and then we decided to start doing it for the movies as well. And so Jacob put up our topic for today, and I hate to say it, Jelly, but you're 3-0 at this point. Or
It destroyed me.
Yes. Shawshank.
Absolutely pooped on my choice. And I can't argue against the quality of the movie that we watched, but as a 90s film, mine wins. Mine wins 90s film way better than it wins best movie, because mine loses best movie.
I would almost agree with that. That's I think
Except for you haven't seen my
good
choice.
Assessment. That's true. I've never
Calling
seen
you
it.
out, man.
That's fine. Call me out. My choice. I put Jacob's choice up, and I won. So that's fine. So, really quickly, some housekeeping. Hey, this is the first time that you are hearing a movie episode and you are not subscribed to the Patreon, which is a new policy of ours.
Yeah.
We are making these episodes public now for the movie podcast. It's no longer a Patreon exclusive, but if you still want to continue watching the video version, then you can go ahead and subscribe to the Patreon. That is going to be exclusive to those people who subscribe. We don't care what dollar amount you subscribe. It is totally up to you. Just go ahead and choose to support us or not. That's all we care about. At the end of the day, we just want you to listen to the podcast, share it out, spread the word. We really just want to hear your feedback and everything on the content that we're creating. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy this movie podcast. But Jacob, we are going to be doing a new segment with our guests, and I'm pretty excited for it, and we're going to call it the Guts segment. Do you have the guts to answer all of these questions that we have today? Are you ready?
All the guts.
All the guns. All right. We want to get to know our guests a little bit more. So, Jacob, here, I'm going to start us off because kind of flying by the seat of my pants with this segment. But what is your favorite video game of all time?
Oh, man, of all time, probably World of Warcraft. That's what I'd have to say. I've spent the most time in that game.
Mm-hmm. So are
Dad joke for the win.
So So are you equating the most time spent is like makes it your favorite game, or is it like legit, some of your favorite memories and favorite, game?
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, I played that game so much. At the time I stopped, I had probably, I think, 12 or 13 max level characters.
Dang.
It was a Night Elf Hunter.
Oh, dang.
Backage.
I had a Night Elf Druid.
Wow. But yeah, so I've played it a ton. I've loved it. It was probably the game I have the most great memories with.
Awesome. Well, He had the guts to answer that question. Jelly, do you have a question ready for Jacob?
Heck yeah, I'm going to try and get you into our book club. Favorite book of all time? Because we got a new thing going over on our Patreon and in our Discord. And we're doing a book club. So favorite book all time. Let's
The
have it.
Bible.
Yo, that's a long book.
I'm not
66
much of a
books.
reader, so I don't have a long list to pick from.
What about like graphic novels, comic books, anything?
I never got into comic books.
What? Okay, dang. Okay, new question then because that one failed. Let's try this again.
Whoa. It didn't fail. He said the Bible. I mean, that's a great book.
He said, okay.
It's the good book.
Follow-up question then. Yo, streaming. You're into it. You do it. Favorite thing to stream for community involvement?
Super Animal Royale.
Explain. I have no idea what that is.
It's a BR. It's a 2D BR top down. It's super laid back. It's a lot of fun. It's I like to describe it as the cutest BR you'll ever see.
And what was it called one more time?
Super Animal Royale.
Super
Animal Royale. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Have Jacob? I think I've seen you. Have you been diving into the Fall Guys, hype right now?
Yeah. I've probably got, probably about 10 hours or so in it.
Okay, I haven't tried it yet, man, but it looks so fun.
It's a lot of fun. I have an epic moment posted on my Twitter.
I'm gonna have to go check that out. Why don't you go
Fall
ahead
Guys?
and Fall Guys? You haven't seen it?
Oh, It's fun stuff.
Oh my goodness.
That would be a great community game if they had a way to make it so you could play with the community. Right now you can group up with up to 4, but that's it.
Up to 4, yeah. That's kind of how I feel when I try to do community nights with like Warzone or something, or Apex. You don't have a big group of people that you can really add and do a community night. So I kind of do.
Yeah.
Been doing.
They should add custom lobbies or something to that game. It would be wonderful.
I think it would be amazing. Well, anyway, as you mentioned, kind of a good segue. Jacob, where can we find you on social media? I know you're on Twitch at VectorX, right? And that's VectorAX. And I think you're on Twitter in the same places, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm VectorX. If you don't find me as VectorX somewhere, then just add an underscore to the end.
Okay. All right. So VectorX or VectorX_. You guys listening to this, if you ever need any like graphics done for like a stream or just emotes or just anything, hit this guy up. Jacob is a wonderful artist. He has some very simplistic, but very, very just like clean designs for overlays. So I'm always impressed by your design work, my friend Jacob.
Would you call them
Thank you.
simple, modern, and awesome?
Yeah, and I know he's pretty fair on prices as well. So go ahead and hit him up. Anyway, that is Jacob. Jelly, we know where to find you, so we're not gonna.
What? Give me here. Yeah, it's easy. I'm all over the place. If you look for the 90s first, you'll find me.
All right. And then finally, another segue, just a little bit of plug. I know Jelly had already mentioned it, but we do have 2 new shows. One new show and then a Patreon exclusive coming up. The next show, one of the shows is called The 90s First Take. It's going to be a kind of a play on ESPN's First Take, where we're going to be debating video game news instead of sports news. So that will be a show that goes out to the public, but Patreon exclusive will be a video version as well. And then for another Patreon exclusive, we are going to be doing a book club that we call The Adventures of the 90s First. So our first book, I believe, is going to be The Martian. And you guys can join the Patreon at $2, the lowest. And then you can join the Discord and join us probably bi-weekly. That's our logo right there for it. Jelly's showing it up. Join us either bi-weekly or we haven't really talked about the schedule, but we will be, connecting in the Discord to run that book club. So yeah, and that's the logo for the 90s First Date. So anyway, that's enough about the Patreon. You guys ready to? You guys ready to get into what I would call potentially one of the greatest movies of all time? Would you guys somewhat agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's super good. All time is a big thing, maybe, but definitely greatest movie involving a prison of all time.
Okay.
I would put it above The Green Mile. My
Oh,
honest take on
I don't know about that.
it. I like the characters. I think the character Tim Robbins does better than than Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan.
Wow, that's a hot take.
I know that he
heard it.
plays the guy so well.
You heard it here, folks.
Don't at me, or do at me. Shoot, I don't care. I'll debate it all day with you guys.
Okay. Anyway, so Jacob here, he helped me decide a movie to put up against Jelly's Air Force One, and we straight up demolished it here, Jacob. And you chose the Shawshank Redemption. Let me tell you guys, this movie is the first time watching it for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly.
I didn't know that.
It was my first time watching it, and first of all, we are a family-friendly podcast. This movie is not family-friendly, so just make sure you are watching it where your kids aren't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And make sure you have enough time as well, just because it's about
2 hours and 20 minutes.
2.5 hour. Okay, so, but anyway, let's start off with just your overall impressions of Shawshank. Jacob, it is your honor as our guest. What are your overall impressions of Shawshank Redemption?
I think it's just a fantastic movie. It really shows the path, or like the process of just that, the prisoners, what they go through, what happens, what they experience, and even their mental state and how it changes throughout things. And like, just, you never see how it's all, you don't see it coming how it ends. And I really like that too.
Absolutely. The ending on that was amazing. We probably will spoil it eventually, but I'm not going to do it just yet. The ending in this film is astounding, the way they did it, the way they set it up, and the fact that they don't give you anything until the end of what's going on. Until the very end, they just hold on to the secret, and they give you all of this other context. And at the end, they're like, "Oh yeah, here's this little thing, this little extra thing, just right at the end, just for you."
Yeah, I mean, I thought, most movies end in good news, right? But I really think what stands out with this movie is I think you have such a great villain, and I think we'll get into that. But you have such an antagonist that makes you feel so much for prisoners. Let's be real, they're prisoners. They're in prison for a reason. Obviously, this movie is Shawshank Redemption, so I mean, one of the people, the main character, spoiler alert, is convicted wrongly, and you really feel for those characters when they have such bad people around them, and they're the good guys as prisoners. That's what I love. Whoa.
Sorry.
That's what
I don't think that was me.
It's all good. That's what I think is so good about this movie is that you're in a prison, and yet the bad guys aren't the prisoners. They're not the antagonists of this movie, and that's why I really like the movie in general. So
I would
Jacob,
say they're not the main antagonists. They definitely are. They're not the main antagonist of the movie, but some of the prisoners are absolutely antagonists in the movie.
That's true.
Sorry, the main character prisoners are not necessarily antagonists.
The
in
bad
this movie.
guys, yes.
Yeah.
I will agree with that statement 100%.
Okay, good. So really quickly before we kind of dive a little bit deeper into it, Shawshank Redemption was released in 1994. Once again, it is rated R. And it does star Tim Robbins as Andy Dufresne, Morgan Freeman as Ellis Boyd Red Redding, Bob Gunton as Warden Norton, William Sadler as Haywood, Clancy Brown as Captain Hadley, and some other, kind of not necessarily main characters, but, integral to the story. I think one of the more integral people here was James Whitmore as Brooks Hatlin. And we'll kind of get into his character a little bit more. But this is based off a Stephen King short story called Rita Hayworth in Shawshank Redemption. So this movie's just, it's drama everywhere you look, everywhere you turn. It's dramatic. And it starts off with a banger. Jacob, why don't we talk about the beginning here? We have Andy Dufresne and his court case. Why is he in court here?
He's in court because they are pinning, or they think that he murdered his wife and her lover. Because they found gun shells at the scene of the crime with they were shot using a matching caliber gun and all that. Yeah.
So he's claiming innocence, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
He's not really he didn't do it, and you find out that he didn't do it, but they're gonna pin it on him because all the evidence kind of does at this point point to him.
But you don't know that he doesn't do it until probably 3/4 through the movie.
Yeah, it's not until later. Yeah. You think there might be this chance that he's guilty, and they lead you to that conclusion several times. Hey, he might be guilty. Like it's
kind of like a running gag.
He could totally be guilty.
Yeah, and then he is basically this movie doesn't stop too much to smell the roses, right? Right after his court case, he's kind of moving along, and he's going to Shawshank, the prison. And Jelly, can you describe the scene where he is arriving in the bus? What's happening with the prisoners there?
Oh, the absolute insane mob that rushes to the fence as the newcomers come to the prison. Yeah, it was a great scene. It gives you that. I mean, for me, a lot old school of a feel, a lot more old school of a feel. But yeah, all of the current prisoners running up to the gates, to the fences, pounding on the fences, hollering, catcalling to the new guys, all of the noobs in prison, all the new prisoners, all of the fresh meat as they're referred to, and the prisoners are losing their minds as all these really scared new convicts are being delivered to Shawshank Prison. As that's happening, we are introduced to a couple of the main characters through their betting on who's going to break first. We meet basically the crew whose names I only know. Red, that's the only one I remember. But we meet 5, I think, people right off the bat. And they're all taking bets on who's going to break. And Morgan Freeman's character, Red, off the rip, sees Andy Dufresne, says, "That's my guy. He's going to break. He's the one. For sure, he's going down."
And he doesn't, right?
Bro, he doesn't break.
So, no,
we learned, we learned that night that he doesn't break. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't cry. He doesn't do anything. He just stoic, strong, solid. Yeah. And that's kind of all we know about him until we get the introduction.
Yeah, so let's talk about Andy Dufresne. So we got our main character here. He's he's seen as a character, by Red, that he's gonna be kind of flimsy. He's not gonna really do good in prison, right? And come to think of it, there's a lot of people who believe that, because I think right off the bat, you have a couple scenes where he's kind of depicted as the weakling, and people, the the I don't know how to dance around this and be family friendly.
We're not going to be family friendly. For anyone listening to the podcast right now, cover your ears, earmuffs. This is your warning. I'll give you 2 more seconds. He's picked out and singled out as a weakling, and he is raped repeatedly in prison. It's disturbing. It's awful,
Yes.
but it happens, and it sets up an entire plot line, one of many in this film. But he is absolutely taken as a weakling and is put in the position, no pun intended, where he suffers greatly.
And that's my co-host, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm gonna be real with you.
Okay, yeah, you're being a little real here. Wow. So Jacob, do you like Andy Dufresne as a character? Like, do you think his overall story arc? Obviously, we'll talk about his redemption later, but do you like him as a character starting off here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you feel sympathy for him, right? Because he's going through all this stuff and you don't know if he really did it or not, but you know that he's being taken advantage of on multiple levels in the prison, and like you don't feel like he deserves it. So you just feel sorry for him. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's not particularly impressive or anything like that. You feel like he's just a poor guy that shouldn't be where he is.
Yeah, and
yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah, and for such kind of like a quick turnaround, I really feel like you kind of get this sense that like Andy is going to get picked on, and he does, but then there's a couple scenes that just kind of put him in favor with the guards.
Huge scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty pivotal.
He takes on, I mean, because the first night we watched that same guard literally beat someone to death.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then what, 20 minutes later in the movie, he's standing up to that very same guard who he watched beat this guy to death.
Yeah.
And that same guard pulls him to the edge of a roof and says, "Hey, you're about to have an accident."
Well, what's even better about that scene though is like the way that Andy starts that conversation. He starts to provoke him. He's like, "Hey, do you trust your wife?" Like, who starts a conversation like that? Especially with a guy like that after you've seen him beat somebody to death.
Literally, this guy 3 scenes ago just completely demolishes this guy, and this guy ends up dying. And this is the captain we're talking about. This is the warden's right-hand man. And we'll get to the warden in a little bit. But this captain is shady, right? And
that was our first view into how bad the supposed good guys were. It was it's huge motif of the movie. Like, but this is our first view of, oh my God, the good guys are bad guys.
Yeah, and Andy Dufresne, he walks up to the guards after he was able to be chosen for a outside job instead of the laundry room where he normally was. Walks up to the guards, and as Jacob said, "Do you trust your wife?" And he says it in such almost an accusatory tone, because he knows that he's going to try to get this guy riled up so that he can really talk some sense into him. And that scene obviously is so pivotal to the entire movie. If you don't have that scene, if you don't have Andy Dufresne stepping up and kind of getting in the face of the captain there, you don't have the rest of this movie.
No, I mean that was his breakout moment of, hey, I'm more than just a pushover. I'm more than just a pincushion. I'm more than just, basically everyone's bitch. And then he asserts himself as, this is who I'm gonna be. And from then on out, we get the Andy Dufresne that we come to know, and then we come to put in a place of esteem because of who he becomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really changes his dynamic with everybody at that point, even the guards.
Yeah, which is why that scene I hold probably as one of the best scenes in this whole entire movie, because it got his fellow prisoners some beers. It got him good. He with how calculated you come to know Andy Dufresne throughout the movie, and you see how calculated he is with his decision making, you knew that was a move not only to get good with the guards but also with his fellow prisoners, because at this point he really isn't in a place of esteem even with his fellow cohorts as prisoners, right?
Oh, he was a nobody, and they looked down on
Yeah.
him. Even his quote unquote buddies, thought very little of him. This was his moment where he earned favor with everybody who knew his name. Anyone who knew the name Andy Dufresne after this event, he earned favor with all of them.
Yeah.
The warden, the guards, the prisoners. It was an all-encompassing act when he stood up to Hadley and then helped him out. Because he first stood up to him the way he confronted him. And then after he stood up to him and said, hey, like, I got a hammer here, I'm going to hit you with it. He immediately says, well, I can get it so you can keep all of that money. Every dime of it.
Yeah. I mean, I would not want to be having that conversation with somebody who just killed somebody right at the edge of a roof. Like, he has got some, as they like to say, cojones. So,
yeah, he's got a set of steel ones on him.
Yeah. So Jacob, let's move on. Before we get back to Andy Dufresne, let's talk about his counterpart in all of this. Let's talk about Red, Morgan Freeman's character. Red's amazing, right? What do you think about Red here, Jacob?
I really enjoy Red's character. He's the narrator, so you kind of have this connection with him already because he kind of narrates in between different things. But he's just level-headed. He's the guy that knows how to get things. You can see from the beginning that after the whole betting on who's going to break, he is invested in Andy at some level. He feels sorry for him. But throughout the movie, he's not the genius or anything, but he is the wise one. He's kind of the one that everybody looks up to. He's kind of like the leader. And I think he's easy to like in the movie because he doesn't really do anything that really gives you any reason not to like him. And like in one scene, he's only guilty man in Shawshank. So, I mean, I think that's significant too. It just, you have this authenticity from Red that I think nobody else offers.
Yeah.
I'd have to agree with that.
Jelly,
yeah.
what do you like about Red? What do you dislike about him? What do you got?
I can't say there's much that I dislike about him. Everything about him. I mean, the first time we meet him, he's in his rejection hearing, as they come to call it. So we meet him in a rejection hearing, and he gets sent out after they reject his appeal, and that's kind of our introduction to who he is. And at first you think, oh, this guy, like, you don't believe a word he's saying. Yeah, he's reformed, this, that. Everything he says, is a bunch of garbage. And he's been in there, I think 20 years the first time that we meet him already. And he's definitely, weathered by the fact that he's been in there as long as he has. He's been in there. He's jaded. He's lost the sense of, later we learn that he's lost the sense of hope, really. But at the time you think he's just lost the sense of what it's like to be on the outside. And then I think throughout the movie, throughout his relationship with Andy Dufresne, he realizes that what he's lost was his hope. understands. Later we get the quote of "Hope is a dangerous thing" in here from him, and then we watch him get his hope back towards the end. And I think that arc for him was amazing. I really, every time you see him, there's not anything that you can look at that he does and you go like, oh, that's bad. I think down on him and his character for it. And there's no moments for that. He's really kind of the moral center of the show, even though he's the guilty man in Shawshank. He's a murderer. He killed someone, but he kind of holds that. I'm a bad guy who does bad things, but they're not really that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, with Red, I think, and this goes with a lot of the prisoners there. You find that he's grown comfortable with prison, right? He is.
Yeah.
This
definitely.
is his
institutionalized.
That's right. That's the word.
Exactly, and he comes to think about like his food, his bed, his just the way of life that he is cultivated in prison is actually a good life. For him, that's how he sees it. And I've actually heard stories of people who have gotten out of jail and they're like, oh well, I had a job, I was getting food, I had a bed, and that's kind of the situation that Red was in. Now, Red understood that the guards were corrupt. Red understood all that, but he knew how to stay away from them and stay out of that. But as both of you guys said, he was the guy that knew how to get stuff. and I think in every prison movie, isn't there that one guy? Like I can't think of a movie where it's all about prison that there isn't that one guy. I could be mistaken, but
it's an essential role in a prison. The guy who can get you things from the outside.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who could get things for you.
And so that's where you start seeing Andy's relationship with Red kind of blossom, is that Andy approaches Red and is like, hey, I hear you can get things. I want a rock hammer. And Red's like, a rock hammer? What do you need a rock hammer for? And he charges him interest. He's like, it's going to be $7 to get it, so I'm going to charge you $3 interest because it's a weapon. And literally Andy just needs it to actually hammer rocks. Like he's legit making a chess set to pass the time. And then obviously it's used for a more useful tool later on in the movie. But let's put Red aside for a second and let's talk the warden, right? So we meet the warden first when Andy is in the line of all the prisoners coming into Shawshank for the first time. And the warden comes and I wouldn't say he's delightful, but he sort of portrays himself as an approachable warden, one that kind of sympathizes or empathizes with the prisoners. He says, the Bible is what he lives by, and this is his prison. Just follow the rules and you should be fine. He kind of has that demeanor about him, but we come to find out this warden, not so good. Not so good, guys. Jacob, what comments you got on the warden?
I think the warden's an interesting character because you see him shift. He's the one that is the slow burn. Because in the beginning, you get that impression that he lives by the Bible and that's what he does. But you learn later that he just uses the Bible to manipulate people for his own gain. And it really, in the beginning, you don't have any really like or dislike for him. And then it just turns into he turns into one of the most hated characters in the movie for me. And so it's just interesting to see that dynamic and how he evolves. He's probably the character that evolves the most, I think.
Yeah, I think I would not disagree. He has one of the best character arcs, whether it's good or bad. He has a brilliant character arc. Jelly, what do you got on the Warden?
I would agree. I think that on screen, I don't know if as a person, fictional character, but as a person, I don't think he evolved really. I think we just kind of peel back the layers. But on screen, his evolution is crazy. Yeah, he's the man of God. He's coming out. He's quoting scripture left and right. Hey, this is a good place. Follow the rules. You'll get along just fine. I'm a good guy. And you see this, what he claims to be. He's talking himself up. Mad game. He's good with words for sure. But then you come to learn, like, this is the biggest crook there is at Shawshank Redemption, and he runs the place. It's crazy the things that he gets gets away with, the things that he does. He straight has a dude more than one, but one for sure murdered in front of him, right in front of his eyes, for being an honest person. So the crook is going to be an honest person, and the Warden has him murdered. And we're like, oh, and that's kind of our glimpse into the lengths he's willing to go to protect himself, which you learn are literally all lengths. He's willing to do anything to not have to serve time in prison.
Yeah.
So it was great. I don't want to say too much. I hope that people watch the movie and find out and see all of these things for themselves, because there's just so much that we can gloss over here that deserves way more detail, and the movie gives it.
Yeah, I would say that even like explaining how the movie happens throughout, like, it's such a journey. Even knowing what happens, like, I get sucked in every time, even though I've seen it so many times. It's a very entertaining story to watch it play out, no matter how much you know.
I think it's super entertaining. Like, before going into watching the film, this is my first time watching it. I have heard that Shawshank is kind of long, or it's 2.5 hours about. But some people have said that it feels longer than it actually is time wise. I was sucked into the movie, man. Like, it was like the drama just did not stop. Every single scene seemed extremely pivotal to the overall story, and I was just super into it, super drawn into it, to continue watching. And I just love this movie already. Like, I've literally only watched it once, and it's one of my top movies that I can remember watching. All right, let's move on. So
Oh, it totally worked every time. You like that? Talking again.
Nailed it.
That show is terrible, and I hate it. Just saying.
Edit now. What show?
Oh, don't you edit this out?
What?
Nailed It on Netflix. It's the worst. Please don't watch it.
Nailed it.
Ugh, my son loves it. Ugh.
All right. Okay, so moving on into Shawshank Redemption, we kind of get to the point where Andy is good with the guards, and let's kind of talk a little bit more about that transition. So, Jilly, can you kind of describe what happens with that transition there? Between him helping Captain
Dufresne and Hadley.
Yeah,
absolutely. So Dufresne is the youngest vice president of a major bank before he is incarcerated, and we learn why right after this altercation between the two of them. Dufresne knows his stuff. Absolutely a freaking genius. Knows how to move money, knows how to hide finances, knows how to rejigger your stuff and make it look good. This guy knows everything there is to know about the banking world. So the first thing he does is help Hadley keep $35,000 of inheritance, which the government was going to tax him on, by doing a one-time gift to his wife. Boom, he keeps all $35,000. After that, the guards begin to use him to do their taxes. They think, oh man, we can save money, and we'll just have this guy do our taxes for us. So then he starts earning favor with all the guards. Well, next year, come tax time, the other prisons in the area happen to have this baseball game that just coincides coincidentally with tax season. So then Dufresne's doing the taxes for all the prison guards in the area, not just Shawshank, but all of them. And the following year, he's doing it for the warden himself and all of the prison guards. So in 3 years' time, he goes from I'm a nobody to big hammer swinging. I own and run this place.
Yeah.
I do all the finances for everyone, and I handle all of the stuff. In that same time frame, he's earning favor not only with the guards and the warden, and kind of showing off his brains, but he's also setting up what we learn is his master plan to kind of take himself and put himself into a way better position when he becomes the librarian, and he starts getting the books and all that stuff. But yeah, it's super. I mean, it's not super fast timeline in the movie because it takes several years, but it happens very quickly in the movie. You watch time in this movie plays a pretty big role. The passage of time, I think, is a huge, almost a character as far as the film goes. There's a huge part of the movie. But in the instance that it moves so differently throughout different parts of the movie, you get a year here, a year there, and then you get 7 years or 3 years, and I think that plays a huge part in this character change that we get from Dufresne, the weak nobody, into Dufresne, I run this show.
Jacob, any holes that we missed there? I think that was a pretty good synopsis.
No, solid, man.
All right. I think it's.
I take notes.
Yeah. I think one of the key things that allowed Andy Dufresne to kind of continue this is that, you know, he doesn't have those people on his back anymore, the other prisoners, like the guards kind of taking care of that.
Was that a bad pun?
What?
No.
I wasn't even. Oh my goodness.
You're welcome,
despite
patrons.
this being rated R, we can be a little family friendly here, Jelly.
I do think that one important part that happens that is significant to the movie is the fact that he has that incident with those guys in the real room for the movie, and then they talk about how he was in the infirmary for over a month, and then that guy got out of the hole in a week, and then you think, man, it really, like, emotionally it brings you in. But then after he gets out of the hole, then Hadley is sitting there waiting for him in his cell, and then you see that dynamic where the guards are sticking up for Andy. I think that's a really important part. That's one of those moments that you don't see coming, and you're like, oh, okay. And it kind of like draws you in even more.
I forgot about that. And on the
Like,
rewatch.
yeah, that's what, that's one of the bigger scenes, because it kind of proves that despite the guards having Andy in their back pocket, or the warden having Andy in their back pocket, the guards and the warden are in Andy's back pocket even more. Like, he clearly... he makes prison life good for himself and good for Red and the others. Like, he's truly he's truly like a savior to all of them from the trials that they would have to face. If it didn't go this way. And let's talk about Brooks a little bit, because I think we don't really get Brooks an idea of Brooks until Andy is reinstated to the library to help him out. And to be honest, I think the library is one of the coolest things about this movie, is because Andy didn't necessarily want to just be the banker for all these people. I think he wanted to make an impact to his fellow prisoners. And that's really his heart behind the library. Jacob, you got something on that?
Not so much on the library. I think what Andy did with the library later was cool. But as far as Brooks goes, I think Brooks's entry to the movie is really what makes him stand out. You know, they sit down for the first time in the mess hall with Andy, and then there's a maggot in his food. And then Brooks, you just hear him off screen. He's like, "You gonna eat that?" And everybody's just looking like, "What is going on? Like, what is this nutso guy thinking?" And so I think that really like brings your attention to Brooks in general. Like, and from there on, you're paying attention when he's on screen.
Yeah.
Definitely opens up his coat, and instead of selling watches, he's got a little bird in there, and you're like,
spoiler
what the
alert, he didn't eat the maggot.
that?
It was a bird just like chilling in his pocket. And you know, it just shows Brooks's, and then eventually, you know, I think that's transferred to Andy a little bit, because kind of Brooks had a soft spot for people, for just anybody, and Brooks was really a character of grace, but he had some shortcomings as well. I mean, Brooks is let go. They said, "Hey, you've rehabilitated enough or whatever to go out into the real world again." And it just kind of shows how, as you said earlier, Jacob, how indoctrinated he is into the culture of prison, that the real world just kind of gets the best of him. And you know, we find that he does commit suicide, because he actually liked his life in prison. He wasn't just a grocer like he was, you know, when he came out of prison. He was somebody that meant something to others, and that's kind of what we all look for in the real world, right, Jelly?
Yeah, he had purpose. I think that's the whole thing is he had a purpose in prison, more than just existing, more than just day-to-day life, more than just doing his work and then going home and existing. And outside, that's what he did. He went to the grocery store, he bagged groceries, and then he just existed. He had no purpose, he had no drive. He had lost everything when they had released him from prison. He had by the end he had spent over 50 years in prison. He was completely institutionalized and knew nothing of what the real world was. The world had changed since he'd been in. This whole movie takes place or starts off, I think, in 1947 is when he's incarcerated, Andy Dufresne. And Brooks has already been there for decades, before Red was there. So he'd been in since, we're assuming, the early teens, the early 1900s. And when they release him, it was 1960 something, I think, or maybe like 1950s, 1960s. So, I mean, he gives a little talk, but you know, cars weren't even popular when he went in.
Yeah.
And when he gets out, people are driving cars everywhere. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the world at all. And you take a man who's in his 70s and drop him into a foreign world, and he's just supposed to somehow cope with that huge change of, my meals are provided, I have a job, I have purpose, I have friends, I have things that I do. You strip everything from him and say, all right, here you go, here's your quote unquote freedom, we're giving you your freedom now. And outside the walls of that prison was way more of a prison than he'd ever been in for decades. Yeah. He ended up, as we see, he carves his name. He makes a place in the world for him, and that's up on the beam in his apartment, and then he hangs himself from it. And it's super sad, and it shows you, I think it's a glimpse into how the prison system breaks individuals and destroys the humanity in people, takes it away, strips it from them, and at the end of it all, when you're finally free, you're not free at all.
So many.
And I think the whole thing with Brooks too is, you know, the movie wants you to pay attention to him, but then like through to the end of his story, he sets up the rhythm that you find out later with Red that kind of leads you to a certain expectation, and then that kind of like switches it up on you, which is another cool part of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely so good when they
Yeah, I think
with Red's
exactly.
arc,
You know, and that is the end of the movie. But you know, just diving into that a little bit there, like you're so right, Jacob. Like you get this sense that Red is just going for the same fate that Brooks kind of went into, but because of Andy, Red had a different outlook on life, and that's why I think Andy is such an amazing main character, because you have this guy who made such an impact on people inside prison that there's but no choice when you get out of prison for Red to you know live and do the things that Andy kind of had him do at the end. Yeah, so Andy then this guy's persistent, right? He's writing the government letter after letter after letter, like, give me some dang books. And then finally the government's like, man, this guy's crazy. That's all he's talking about. Let's just give him some books. Let's give him some money to go ahead and fund this prison library. And one of the things that I think is cool about it that it turned into was that Andy was helping a lot of the prisoners get their GED, get their high school diploma. And then that's where you meet probably one of the most, maybe even the most pivotal character in Shawshank, and that's Tommy. So, Jacob, who's this Tommy guy that kind of shows up?
Tommy is just a young buck.
Young buck.
He's
get off my lawn.
He's in and out of jail. You learned from, B&E to all kinds of things, and he just keeps getting caught, keeps getting in prison, keeps getting out. It's just a lifestyle that he's leading. But you learn that he recently got married and he has a kid, and so Andy kind of takes him under his wing and tries to help him better himself and better his life, so that when he gets out, maybe he'll change what he's doing and be able to support his family. And I think in the same way that Andy gets invested in Tommy, that we get invested in Tommy. Because, it obviously later on when he tells his story about what he ran into in the other prison, it really gets you invested. But I think you're pulling for Tommy, even though he's on a bad path already.
Yeah, he's like this young kid who, he looks the part of a prisoner, kind of. Like he's kind of like that Elvis guy, that troublemaker. Like he's just like looking slick. He's usually got the V in his button-up shirt. He's trying to look good as a prisoner, and like. It's like, why is this? There's got to be such a doofus reason why he's in prison. And to be honest, it's theft. And you even get that scene where Andy's like, maybe you shouldn't try thieving anymore. You don't seem too good at it.
You're a bad thief.
Yeah.
And I think it's a wonderful scene. And then that scene kind of climaxes to kind of the running joke that they all had throughout the movie, and I thought it was a funny one that, oh, don't you know we're all innocent in here? But I think it's Tommy didn't believe in himself, and he needed somebody too, and Andy did. Hang on, guys, can we pause?
Sure.
Pause. All right, cool. Yep, always. So where were we? So Tommy is in the scene, and then Jacob, what does Tommy come to find out about Andy how is he related to Andy?
Well, you find out he's talking to Red, and he's asking Red about his story, because when he can't get a straight out answer out of Andy. And then Red tells him, he was some hotshot banker that ended up His wife left him for a pro golfer. And then that was all of the details, really, that he needed to put all the pieces together. And so he pretty much told Andy's story to Tommy. And then Tommy realized that he was the guy that the other murderer that he met in prison was talking about. It was a really big reveal in the movie. Crucial moment.
Crucial, right? Like, and then this kind of plays to, we see Andy's first mistake, right? Up until now, he hasn't made any mistakes. He hasn't made any mistakes about, becoming good with the guards, becoming good with the prisoners, getting away from those people who, loved him too much. He hasn't made any mistakes. Jelly, he hears this story. Shut up. He hears this story from Tommy. What is his mistake?
The struggle snuggle. You're killing me, man. His mistake is that he cares for Tommy. That's the true mistake. He cares for Tommy, and he allows that to cloud his judgment. And he takes this evidence of Tommy having a testimony that would absolutely free him. And get him off on all charges. They would have to free him.
Wait, so are you on the side that you don't believe Tommy's story?
No. I believe Tommy's story.
Oh, okay.
So I'm saying Andy also believed him. Andy trusted him. Andy trusted Tommy, and what happened is it got Tommy killed. Just suffice it to say, that's what happens.
But practically, what is Andy's mistake? He goes
What
to
does
the warden. Do with this story?
He takes.
There it is.
I was driving there. I was taking my time.
Well, you were at a grandma's pace.
Gotta build the suspense. So yeah, he takes the story because hears it. Red tells him. Tommy tells him. And he takes that right to the warden, who he thinks he has good enough favor with. He's been working with him for years now, if not decades. I can't remember exactly how long. It was 47.
His entire time in the prison was 19 years.
19
Yeah, so
years,
it'd been over a decade that he'd been working directly with the warden, and his schemes and his nefarious activities and the money laundering and all of the bad things that warden was doing, which was a lot of bad things. And all of that, he thought he had earned enough favor or earned a position to be able to go to Warden Norton and say, hey, like, this frees me. This is my evidence. This clears me. I'll keep my mouth shut and just let me go. And that ultimately leads to a cutscene. Boom. We get this thing. Tommy's getting pulled out of his cell. Warden wants to meet with him. It's nighttime. It looks funny. We're wondering what's going on. They release him into the yard. Nobody's there. He's walking around. He walks towards the main fence to get out, and the warden comes up. That scene comes up from behind, backlit, kind of. They make it epic, and then they give you this. This is that glimpse into how bad the warden is. This is that real look at he is a bad person. Not just he's into bad things, not just, his moral compass is slightly askew. This dude is bad. He's as bad as anyone in Shawshank, and he belongs in Shawshank with the rest of these guys. He just happens to be on the other side of those cell bars. And that's when we realize he's willing to go to any lengths to keep Dufresne and his game going as long as he can.
Well, and you said it, to keep Dufresne, because that was, if there's one mistake, going to the warden with the story as the first one. But Andy's second mistake is he's been doing too good of a job.
Yeah,
right?
he became crucial to the scheme.
He's doing too good of a job with, helping the warden in his scheme, and the warden just can't lose him. And just can't. And we find out later that Andy kind of has a plan to get through this all. But I've always been true. I've always been a firm believer that even in any movie, and we're not just talking superhero movies, but like the antagonist like makes a great movie, and I really think the Warden here is a really good villain to Andy's hero. And I think that turn, those couple scenes made me like really be like, okay, this is a great movie. This isn't just a movie that hits the surface of good. This is a great to amazing movie. Because you have just pivotal villains, pivotal heroes, and that's what makes this movie so special. Is that you're like, it's like reading a book and you're like, man, these villains are so bad that you just get so excited when the good guys start doing some good in the movie. Do you got anything on that, Jacob?
Yeah, I think that just you get so. I think what makes it good is it's not until the end, right? When you see Andy get the best of everybody and you see him come out on top despite everything that he's been through. I think that's really the clincher in the whole thing, because up until that moment, then you don't really know. Like, it's just doom and gloom, really. And then Tommy comes along and he's got so much momentum, and then it just kind of all gets squashed out. But honestly, like, as much as I've seen the movie, I really don't know when Andy came up with the plan. I think he wanted to get out, but I don't know how much of it was actually planned or how much, he thought of it after Tommy died.
I almost think the plan had to spawn in those 2 months that he was in the cooler, right?
That would make a lot of sense.
He just had his mind just would have had to be churning,
yeah.
During those 2 months to figure out a way to get out of this.
I think it started long before that. I think since the beginning. I think since he set it up. I think that as soon as he got his hands on all the guards and Norton's tax documents, I think from that moment on, he was finding a way, because he mentions it a few times in the movie. To Red himself, he goes, on the outside I was a straight dude, honest as the day is long. It wasn't until I came to prison that I became a convict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. I think that as soon as he came to prison, after those first few months with the snuggle struggle buddies, I think that he realized the things he would have to do to survive and get through it.
Yeah.
And I think that from the moment he got his hands on those tax documents and saw what was going on, he saw an opening. And I think from then he took that and grew that. Same with, it's not until a few weeks in, Red, as he's narrating, says it was a few weeks before he said anything to anyone. And that person happened to be me. He had heard that I was a guy who could get things. And that's when he asked for a rock hammer. And shortly after getting the rock hammer, even though it took a little while, he's chiseling his name into the wall of the prison, of his prison cell, and it chunks off. Yeah. And I think from that moment on, at the end of the day,
though, like, does he spawn the plan then, or does he like, okay, yeah, I got this hole that I could create, but like does he really decide, like, okay, all right, let's just dive right in. His plan to get out of this is to escape and then take on the persona of this guy that he created, who would be the middleman for the Warden's funds, right? He is the guy that, if worse comes to worse, if everything gets found out, he's the guy that actually has the funds kind of in his name, and everything would be pinned on him, and the Warden would be scot-free. But it's not until Andy knows that the Warden is going against Andy, that he kind of decides, okay, I'm going to be this Randy dude. Or was Randy his name? Something like that.
I can't remember.
I can't remember either, but I'm going to be this guy. I'm going to escape. I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to get my funds because they're mine. They're in my name. But, but like, wouldn't you think that he figures out that plan, while he's in the 2 months in the cooler? I don't know.
See, the question that raises in my mind is if Tommy wouldn't have died, would he have just stayed there to help people? And that's the part I don't know. Because when he started messing with the wall with the rock hammer, he wasn't even doing the stuff for the warden at that point. So obviously he was just trying to dig his way out. But I don't know if he had like a grand master plan. But I feel like maybe with the library and how he was helping people, then maybe his plan was to stay there because he thought he belonged there or whatever, because he wasn't even sure if he did it. He thought that he didn't. He had no memory of doing it, but he didn't have any other explanation. But then Tommy dies, and then he has, that was one of his main projects, and it just kind of got all stomped out. All of his hopes of being able to be released and proven innocent were gone. Yeah. It just kind of, I think that was the thing that snapped him.
Well, and you have to have this sense of like, he maybe pins Tommy's death a little bit on himself, wouldn't you think? Like, it's because of his story. It's because of Tommy's knowledge about the truth about his story that Tommy ultimately ends up dead. At the warden's hand, at the Captain Hadley's hand. I think it's almost, what's really cool is that, Andy has a backup plan. He has this kind of foolproof plan that, there's this giant hole that he's been covering up with his girl posters. And the warden doesn't find out until that night. And let's talk about that a little bit. I almost didn't see this coming. Because the way they filmed those scenes leading up to his escape, it looks like he's going to commit suicide, Absolutely. Jilly, I think that's an amazing scene. What do you got on that?
So we skated over it just a minute ago. As we were talking about his plan and when he came up with them and when he decided that he was going to assume Randall Stevens was the identity, assume the identity of Randall Stevens, take the warden's money. So I think that before that, you're watching a man who had been in prison for 19 years by the end of it. I think you slowly watch, up until Tommy gets there, you slowly watch as his hope is drained from him. At the beginning, when he first gets there, he's got a great line, which I just had pulled up. He says to Red, where did it go? Two things. So the first thing is he says, remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. And then later he says, I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living or get busy dying. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he says to Red in the beginning about hope, or earlier in the movie, and the second thing he says at the end, it's right before we get this thing of, oh my God, he's going to kill himself. They gave him a 6-foot length of rope. He's going to hang himself. Yeah. And you get this slow draining of his hope over 19 years wasting away in prison, and not till the end of it did his hope get reignited. And I think his hope got reignited. I think you're right. I think he had planned to stay as a convict to be able to help people as best as he could in the library until he got that flicker of hope again. And I think Tommy was that ignition, was the match, was the straw that broke the camel's back, was that thing that eventually set him off, and it leads up to his prison break, that pivotal moment of, is he going to get busy living or get busy dying? And they leave us, on that for just a minute. We don't know really what happens. Then it goes to Red, and it goes to, oh my God, there's no one here, and then it goes to what happened. But we get that, it was the longest night of my life. And Red waiting until the morning cell check to make sure everyone's there. And it's not until then, and they do a great job of building that suspense.
Oh yeah, I
It's
agree.
not until then that we know that anything has happened besides he killed himself in the cell. That's what
Mm.
happened.
Yeah.
That's what they want you to believe, and that's where they're going to leave it for a minute and let you just stew on it.
Yeah, and like even when those guards were coming over to his room and they're like, Dufresne, get out. And I'm like, where did like he's definitely dead. Like but like also where did he go? I think that's probably one of my like biggest gripes about the film. I don't have many. And I mean this may only be the only one, but like he is conveniently placed where there is like he's at the end and he's like he's at the end cell. If he digs a hole this way, he's in a convenient spot for all this to happen, obviously. But then I start thinking like, okay, it can't be too much of a gripe. This guy dug maybe like a 10-yard hole with a rock hammer.
Yeah,
Like,
spent 12 years digging a hole.
Oh my goodness, like it's insane his drive. And he had hope that whole time that one day this would come to use. And after those 2 months in the hole and Tommy dead and no longer really anything to live for anymore within this prison, he's fed up. And so he plays out his plan. He gets the tax documents. He sends a letter over to the FBI. Like he has a foolproof plan to get Shawshank, basically to rid them of the powers that be at that prison. And you kind of the Captain Hadley goes peacefully, but the warden he loads a gun, right?
He dispatches of his own problem.
He's not going to let them. He's not going to let them take him, and he does shoot himself to death, right in the face, really. But yeah, I mean I thought that whole scene was crazy. He gets a bunch of money out of the bank. He's living free. He goes down to Mexico, but then he sends Red a postcard. And what's really cool is that like Red is super happy for Andy, but Red misses him. He misses his best friend, and ultimately they do end up back together in paradise. But Red, as we already talked about, had to go through a little bit of the motions. And one of the best scenes in the film, you guys, is his last hearing. Like to get out of prison. Like that's hilarious, right?
His rejection hearing, his final rejection hearing.
He's like, man, what does rehabilitated even mean? Like,
I don't even know what that word means anymore. I know what it means to you, Sonny.
So that's kind of the end of the movie. I think we have amazing themes in here. Like, Jelly, what's your favorite thing about this movie?
Gosh, narrow it down. The twist end might be my favorite. The fact that it's probably the twist end and everything that went into getting us to that point. Because for the entire movie, and this is a 2.5-hour movie, for the entire movie, like, you think, kind of literally, you think, oh great, he's in prison, he doesn't belong there, and then you start to think maybe he does belong there, and then you get to these points when you're like, well, I don't know if he does or doesn't, but he's here, he's making the best of it. And all the way up until the very end, the last few scenes, the last few scenes, you get this this epiphany moment of, oh my god, he's been breaking out the entire time and they haven't shown us any of it. Like, not one lick of him
Right.
dumping all the stuff into the yard or anything. They didn't give us anything. Like, throughout the movie, rewatching it, you don't see any of this happening. They don't clue you in. They don't give you little bits and pieces. It's nothing. It's hidden. It's completely secret. And then at the end they go, oh yeah, by the way, he's been breaking out the whole time. And they kind of just drop this bomb on you and expect you to accept it and say, okay, that's I'm totally okay with that.
That's
without
cool.
it
That's cool.
exploding your brain.
Jacob, what is your favorite thing about Shawshank Redemption?
And my favorite part is just the storytelling. Storytelling's amazing. It
Oh yeah.
it hooks you. It takes you along for this roller coaster ride of a movie because there's ups and downs all throughout. And I think that's really like the thing that gets me at least with any movie is just they hook you in and make you invested in the characters. And this movie does it so well. And like even the twists, there's tons of twists throughout the whole movie. But the twist at the end is so good. And then when they go back and show you pieces and like you could have seen it happening, but you never did. Like him walking back to the prison cell in the suit. You saw that scene, but you didn't see all the pieces. And then they walk you back through it. And then they're like, oh, well, you couldn't see this happening. That kind of thing. Like it's just such good storytelling to me.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think my favorite thing about this movie is just it's kind of almost like an espionage like spy thing. Like Andy's got the in, and just the story of him like just kind of being an undercover, like doing all this work for the bad guy, and then just like kind of winning at the end. I love those types of stories. As you said, Jacob, like the storytelling is just phenomenal in this. The characters you truly appreciate, and they're all prisoners. Like I think it's just a fantastic story, and you can't go wrong watching this film. It is a classic. It is top 10 material. I don't know if it'd be on my personal top 10. Well, whatever, but it is high up there. It is a very, very brilliant movie. And it's all to those brilliant and inspiring characters. Again, they're prisoners and they're inspiring. It's crazy. So, Jacob, the movies and the TV shows that we talk about, we rate them, and our rating system is 5 out of 5. And you have to pick something from the movie and or TV show to rate it. So I will start. I will go. This movie is 5 out of 5 rock hammers. And you can't go wrong with this movie. Go watch it. 2.5 hours well spent. Jelly, what do you got?
Yo, I'm going. This is absolutely 5 months out of the hole, out of 5 months in the hole, because this is great. It's a great movie. It's wonderful. I know I lost, and we didn't do Air Force One. I'm glad that we did this movie, though, and that you were introduced to it, because I had seen this a few times before, and I knew how good of a movie it was, but I knew it was a long trek through it. I'm glad we did it. I'm super glad. It's such a great movie.
Right,
I will give the movie 5 library books out of 5 library books.
Oh, there you go.
Is there something in that library book?
Maybe.
Yes. All right, it's time to just dive into what we have been doing. Jacob, what have you been doing? Just like anything, just plug anything you've been doing. Just let us know what nerd stuff you've been doing. What's your hobbies? Anything. What you been up to, man?
Well, I've just been playing games. I've been getting into RimWorld, learning that game. I've been playing Fall Guys. It's like a colony management game.
Okay.
So it's pretty deep, but I had a friend really want me to play it, so he got it for me.
That's a nice one.
But other than that, I've been playing Minecraft. I play a lot of different things, but trying to build up my graphics and stuff like that. But I also do woodworking from time to time.
Woodworking.
Nice.
Do you own are you in a house? Like, do you own a house and like you have your own studio to woodwork and stuff?
Yeah, like half of our garage I have set aside for tools and stuff like that.
That's amazing.
Awesome. Super awesome.
That is awesome. Jelly, what have you been up to?
Nothing. Life, work, family, friends, hanging out, video games, movies, the usual stuff. Life is a pretty much usual thing for me. It doesn't change much. It doesn't differ in any ways. I got 2 kids, got a wife, got a job, so I'm always doing those things first, and then if I ever have a little bit extra time, then I'm playing Apex or watching something from the '90s.
Do you only watch something from the 90s? What are
Uh,
you watching now, man?
right now, literally in the background, I've had Legend of Korra going, and that's been pretty great. But
Thank you.
for the most part, yeah, I'm watching '90s shows and '90s movies, and just trying to get a jump on things. I like the stuff from that era. What can I say? It's almost like we should
It's
do a
all good.
podcast about it.
I don't know. Maybe. For me, I've been playing a lot of Control. Trying to beat that. It's Remedy. They're my favorite developer, single player horror adventure game. That game just controls, pun intended, so well. Like, just it feels good to control Jessie, who is the main character in this, and just controlling her is just absolutely amazing. Every control that I press, it
How
just
many times
works
are you gonna say control right now?
until somebody controls me.
That game is creepy AF and gives me the
That-
willies when I watch you play it.
Dude, it is so creepy sometimes. And like I don't necessarily like horror films are my favorite genre, but like I don't recommend like being immersed in playing these types of games at like midnight. It's like it can get a little freaky. But yeah, I've been trying to get through that. But yeah, I'm listening to Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I've never finished the series. Be Quiet, Jelly. Um, that's his favorite book series, Jacob, and he always
No,
Of all
gripes me for
time.
not finishing it.
I've seen all
He
the
started and he
movies
didn't finish.
many, many, many times.
Don't you come in with that nonsense. Books, books.
I told you I'm not a reader.
So
I
I've
can
been
send you
listening
the
to
audio.
that. Yes, we can share. I've been listening to the Half Blood Prince, and so far it's really good. So really enjoying it. But that's kind of all that I have. Anything
Yo, I got
else?
one more thing real quick. Speaking of horror games that you immerse yourself into, I played the Half-Life Alex in VR.
Oh, you did? Really?
Did not appreciate that. It's very good. It is very immersive and it is scary as heck. And I am not into horror movies or horror games, so I did not enjoy it. It was terrifying, and like because it's VR, it's like it's truly immersive. I found myself literally like kneeling on the ground, ducking and like looking around corners before I moved there. It was dumb. I mean, and I was like worried, even though this is a game, but it like had my heart rate up. It was
Oh, yeah.
it was crazy. I didn't. It was fun, but it was like I'm not gonna go back and play it again.
I mean, that is, I think a lot of outlets actually gave that like a 10 out of 10. Like, it's a very good game, apparently. Too bad it's kind of trapped in VR. Jacob, do you have VR? Like, do you have the gaming rig for that? No.
No.
Yeah, I've never been one to try to invest into VR, and I just don't care too much about it.
I
But
know a guy who
that's
has
just me.
one. You should go to his place and try it out. He lives near you, ish.
Ish, yeah.
A
But I can't
couple hours
because
away.
then I would have to quarantine myself. So
Heaven
yeah,
forbid.
let's not talk about that. Well, this has been the '90s versus at the movie. Jacob, thank you so much for joining us. It was
Thank
a
you.
pleasure having you. And
It's been
thanks
super fun,
for
man.
thanks for putting up a movie that just destroyed Jelly. Like, I just love that.
You're
You really
welcome.
gonna go there?
Yo,
I will
yeah,
shut my
we will
computer
go
right
there.
now.
All right. Well, my name's Mike. That's Jelly. This is Jacob. We'll see you all. Words are hard. We'll see you guys.
We'll catch y'all later,
Have a good-
guys.
Have a good day. And